Everyone's asking the same questions at the moment. Has alt season arrived or has alt season been delayed? Have we topped? Are we going to top in Q4 or is this cycle going to stretch out into 2026? Well, in this video, we're going to go through a lot of charts today and we're going to discuss all those key points. So if that sounds good to you, come and join the show. So welcome back to Prodigal Son Crypto with myself, Chris. Today we're going to go through so many charts. We're going to talk about alt season. We're going to talk about the macro outlook. We're going to talk about the cycle, where we are in it, how far do we think it's going to go based on what we're seeing in the charts. We're going to talk about the potential of the Fed rate cut and everything like that. So let's just jump straight in, shall we? Okay, so as we can see on the crypto markets this week, relatively not much has gone on. Okay, in the past 7 days, although you might have seen some dumpy action, okay, particularly maybe in your lower cap altcoins, it's relatively unchanged. Okay, so Bitcoin's up 2%, Ethereum down 1.5%, and a lot of these are really they've not really gone anywhere. When we're talking about single digit percentiles, there's nothing really to write home about, is there? Really, there's nothing to worry about, cry about. It's all looking good. Okay, and looking at Bitcoin itself, okay, so it's dropped down to around 107,000 last week. This week it started to have a climb up. It made it as high as 113,000. Got rejected from there, and now it's back below this level at 110. Okay, so we're looking for it to break 110. In the grand scheme of things, if you look, it's been holding this uptrend here since May of this year. So it's been holding this uptrend. Okay, it just needs to break above this level, and then we can start maybe challenging up the highs. Now, if we do lose this level and lose this trend line, okay, we'd be looking to come down to probably around 100k. All right, 101k. Now there is some support and resistance here around 105, 106. Okay, so I wouldn't discount that holding a support either. Okay, but it doesn't look too bad. Now, one thing I am getting a little concerned about is these 5 and 13 EMAs coming down, but we've probably got another week or two for them to cross. Okay, so let's hold on, let's wait and see, let's monitor that as we go through in the next coming weeks. As for the fear and greed index, we're sitting at neutral, 48. We did tap some fear last week at 39. Now on CoinMarketCap, they give a slightly different reading of neutral, 41, and saying that we did touch fear last week at 39 on the 2nd of September. But as we can see on Into the Cryptoverse, on this fear and greed chart, okay, we have touched fear a number of times this cycle, and it's often been a good area to buy as we move higher. As we saw in 2021, that cycle, when you had the big rally up, there was literally no fear. So this is a different kind of cycle. Maybe because the institutions are here, they're chopping us up a little bit and trying to shake us out. Okay, so as you can see in that 2019 rally, there was times where it got into fear. Okay, well, let's find those. There we go. You got fear on the rally up. Okay, so maybe this is early cycle, and maybe we're going to get into that stage where maybe this could have been a last bit of fear before we start seeing a big rally up, and it's just greed and extreme greed for a very long while, as you can see in big rallies in the past. The Altseason Index is saying it's at 59. It's closer to alt season than it is to Bitcoin season, so we are getting there. And as we've seen in the past, when it breaks into the alt season, okay, it can only be up there sometimes for a short time. But look at this back in 2022. That was quite a big alt season as we led out of the bear market when altcoins were outperforming Bitcoin. This was 2021. It spent quite a number of weeks up there and months. Okay, so hopefully that's what we're looking to get. So if you're still thinking about getting in on certain altcoins, they're still not in bad positions to accumulate. So yeah, looking all right on that front. And then you can see the top 100 coins performance over the past 90 days in comparison to Bitcoin, which is all the way down here at 5%. Okay, so over 90 days, these are some of the coins that have done well. Not many have done more than a 2x. I mean, you've got a handful up here. Okay, you've got Meme Core, OKB, Pengu, Kronos, Athena, Aerodrome. And a lot of these plays in here that you can see are either Ethereum based or Solana based, which is something I've been talking about in my other videos. Okay, so for Ethereum, you've got ETH, Aerodrome, which is on Base. You've got Chainlink, you've got Polygon, you've got um, Aave, AVAX, you know, Curve. And for Solana, I can see some. You've got Radium, Solana itself, PIF, Bonk, and yeah, that's probably about it for Jupiter. You know, there's a number of ETH and Solana plays in here. A couple of the big layer ones as well in XRP, Hype. There's a couple in there, you know, so you can see that there's a lot of the bigger, well-known coins, some new hot ones as well, such as Say, and as I already mentioned, Hype there. But a lot of it's Ethereum, a lot of it's Solana based. So I was kind of right in what I'm saying with the institution's adoption of Solana and Ethereum as some of the key chains since the Department of Commerce announced that Chainlink and PIF will be the oracles providing the data on chain, the economic data on chain, that is. And just to have a wider view of the Altseason Index that we like to look at, you know, obviously when you're getting up in this red area, this is a good time to be taking profits. And when it's down here, which is they call Bitcoin season, that's a good time to be accumulating altcoins. So we're sort of somewhere in the middle right now, getting closer to nearer the alt season. We are edging closer to it. It doesn't mean we can't chop down and you know, range about for a little while before this goes on. It doesn't have to happen quickly. Sometimes these leg ups can be long and fast though. However, if you see that was 2021, and you know, this was 2017. So if you see what I mean, and then you can have these longer periods up here, you know. So that's hopefully what we're going to get to. Now everyone's looking at what the Fed's decision is going to be for rate cuts on the 17th of September. Now, it's looking very likely that the rate cuts come in, but will it be 25 basis points or will it be 50? There's an 87% chance of a 25 basis point cut or a 11.3% chance of a 50 basis point cut. So the jobs data came out last week and new jobs was below expectations and there was a slight uptick in unemployment. So that is making things a little bit more likely that and even possible of a 50 basis point cut. I think 25 basis point is more likely. I don't think Jerome Powell is going to make it look like he's done a knee-jerk decision or make it look like he was wrong the whole time and react on that irrationally. So he's probably going to keep it cool with a 25 basis point cut. Now, Henrik Seberg has got a lot to say at the moment, and I really respect his opinions. I think in many ways, very right, and he's analysing the whole market cycle very, very well. I mean, you know, he does make some wild predictions, and he seems a bit too confident about those things. But you know, he really believes in the data that he's studying, and you know, I'm going to follow along with him. I'm going to obviously make my own decisions, and I suggest you do the same. Just look at the data, look at the charts, weigh everything together, and just monitor everything. Don't make irrational decisions. Take your time because you know these things aren't going to, you know, everything's not going to collapse overnight, and you know, everything's not going to go to the moon overnight either. So we've got time to always assess what's going on. Now, Henrik Seberg says stagflation at 2.7% inflation and unemployment at 4.3%. Absolutely not. Inflation is lower than in 2001 and in 2007, and unemployment is lower than in those 2 years. And inflation is lagging the business cycle. Did we see stagflation there? No, just study the charts. And I suggest just take a screenshot of this chart or go to his page if you want to download it or anything. But you can see what's going on in all of these areas, okay? You can see this unemployment rate ticking up. You can see inflation, okay? And, you know, this is other cycles. Look at these years, okay? 2001, 2007, 2008, these periods, and look where things look very similar. Now, the Fed rate cut was a bit later at the end of the cycle in 2007, 2001, okay, unless you want to say the markets have topped already. So this is something to question as well. What will the rate cut do to the markets? And that's why people are concerned. Is it going to be a 50 basis point cut, or is it going to be a 25 basis point cut? Because they'd say that 50 basis points might be seen as irrational and could tank the markets. Here you can see the NASDAQ, where rate cuts were implemented and what the impact was on the markets following that in the month later and the 3 month later. Okay, so back in 2001, the dot-com bubble, okay, when the Fed cut rates, it a month later it was up 1.7%. Okay, it was only 3 months later that it was down 36%. Okay, so kind of around the top, but the markets went higher in the month following. Okay, in 2007, the global financial crisis. Okay, in the month later, okay, the markets were up 5.6%, but they was then down 2.1% 3 months later. The other times, 1998, okay, 3 months later, the markets were up 25%. 1995, NASDAQ was up 6.2%. And 2019, 1.4%. Now, I don't believe we're in a 2019 mid-cycle, okay? And could we be in a 95, 98? I think we're closer to a top of a bigger market cycle. So we could be closer to a 2001, 2007 style thing. But what I would say is both those times, the markets run for a couple of months later. So if we get a rate cut in September, does that mean the markets could top in October or November, or somewhere around that time? It's possible. It is possible. So you do have to keep that on your radar. Now, I would say don't just go by this. Think about all of the charts we're going to be looking at, okay? Now, I always talk about the ISM, and if it's above 50, it shows expansion in the markets. Below 50 shows contraction. Now, it has been struggling to get above 50, okay? But it saw a move up this month with a reading from going from 48 to 48.7. So it seems to be heading back up in the right direction, because we've only just slightly gone over 50 a couple of times. Now, this is really cyclical, okay? So if you look at other cycles, okay, this is March 2020, calling the lows of the markets. And in February, March 2021, which we know was a massive alt season, it was up at the highs. If we go back to 2015, December 2015 at the lows, and then 2017, end of 2017 into 2018 at the highs. Okay, let's go back further. You can see that 2008 called the bottom of the markets, and then there was some chop in the markets for a few years after that to try and recover, but it definitely called highs and lows a bit. Okay, it doesn't call highs and lows precisely, but if the trend is there, it's your friend. Okay, so what I'm saying is, at the moment, this is the longest time it's spent below 50 ever since, going back all the way back to 2008. You can go back further and you can see other times that it never spent time like this under there. Okay, so I've always been saying this looks like it could be some sort of accumulation pattern. It's got higher lows, okay, and then are we going to see this big melt up, which would indicate the end of a cycle and potentially a blow off top phase? Okay, so we're going to keep our eyes on that. Bitcoin dominance is still in a huge downtrend. It's rolling over big time. The EMAs are starting to roll over. Okay, when you zoom in, yes, Bitcoin dominance has had some moves up in the past couple of weeks, but it's failing to get above this 58.9 level, a level we was looking for it to break as it headed down. We was looking at it to break 60%, 59, 58, okay, and it's still in this 57.5 to 58.5% range. Okay, when it breaks down here, we could see a bigger move down. We put that on the monthly and look at these big candles. Okay, right, we've got one big monthly candle, two big monthly candles. Now, could we spend a month? Because you know everyone's talking about September being a bad month for risk assets. Maybe spend a month just floating around here. Maybe it comes up a little bit higher and tests 60%. Okay. But when you go and look at previous cycles with Bitcoin dominance, you can see how some of these big drops end up playing out, you know, from the top there, okay, down into May 2021, and then spent some considerable time down there. Okay. Then, you know, go back to 2017. Look at that big drop there. Okay. So are we waiting to see something like that happen? I believe it's going to happen. I believe it's just a matter of time. I always say to everyone that tries to say the cycle's over and everything, that a really key point to always remember is Bitcoin's dominance does not end the cycle at the highs. It ends the cycle at the lows. Okay, so that should give you a bit of confidence that, you know, unless we could say that altcoins are never ever going to make it, you know, it's completely game over for them, including Ethereum, including Solana, all the biggest ones you can think of, XRP, everything that you can ever think of, that Bitcoin dominance is going to outperform them forever. It's not going to happen. So I believe that at the end of the cycle, Bitcoin dominance will be down somewhere here at the lows, maybe around 40%. Okay, maybe it goes lower than it's ever been before. We don't know yet. We haven't got to that stage of the cycle. But I'd say with cycle timing, I'd say maybe it could be a higher low. But if it's a higher low for Bitcoin dominance, that's still fantastic gains for your alt bags. And then we've got Ethereum versus BTC. It came down to these lows, just like Ben Cowan said. Actually, I don't know if you watched Ben Cowan, but he was banging on about Ethereum going home, and that's what he meant. He meant about it coming down to these levels. I think he thought it was going to go a bit lower, but you know, it held around the same sort of area. Okay, and it's made a fantastic bounce up. Now, Ethereum against Bitcoin kind of oscillates. Okay, it's rarely. I mean, apart from back in like the early days, where it rallied hard against Bitcoin. It kind of just is holding in this big range. I mean, can Ethereum have another big rally against Bitcoin? This was the high in 2017, and this was the high in 2021. Okay, so we could at least expect Ethereum to get up here against Bitcoin again. So that's another thing as well. Look at the move; it's been holding up really well, but despite the pullback in the markets over the past week or so, it's actually holding really well. It's hardly come down at all, really. And we can see that in the USD pair chart, okay? It's literally only come down a little bit over the last couple of weeks, because we've got the local high of around just under $5,000, 4947, and it's now at, you know, 4294. So, and Ethereum could literally blast that in a couple of days if it really wanted to. So we are sitting very close to the all-time highs for Ethereum, and I believe with all what's going on in the markets, I believe this is going to break all-time highs very soon. Could it be days or weeks or a month? I don't know, but that's soon enough in my opinion. And if you've seen Tom Lee, the analyst from Fundstrat, talking on CNBC, well, he's a CEO of Bitminer, and they're now the second largest crypto treasury company in the world, just after MicroStrategy with Michael Saylor. And we know what Bitminer and Tom Lee has been banging about lately. It's Ethereum. So a lot of that is going to be Ethereum. So, like I say, there's a lot of bullish things going on for Ethereum. A lot of treasury companies that you're hearing about now, they're not only talking about Bitcoin anymore. I've seen treasury companies now talking about Ethereum, BNB, Solana, and others. You know, so there's like an institutional alt season about to happen because they're all loading up. So people say, where are the retail? The new retail will come when number goes up significantly, because what will happen is people who are already in crypto will be making money. Then they'll be going and telling their family and friends. Then all the new retail will come. And could that happen towards the end of the year, you know, getting closer to Thanksgiving, Christmas, and all of that, telling their friends? That could be the peak of it all, you know. So the institutions are loading up, they know what's going on. And there's something I'd like to address about the global M2. The global M2, the money supply of the world, this is this yellow line, okay? And this is the Bitcoin price with it, okay? Now, it was following it very, very closely. Like, if I, you know, you can move it like this as much as you want. But I'm against this idea of people trying to match this up to M2. It's a directional indicator. I mean, when you zoom out, this is why I'm showing to you zoomed out, because it doesn't always follow it that closely. But if you're at this stage of the business cycle where you're looking at other charts to, you know, as confluence with this, then, you know, to see that Bitcoin is like straying away from it slightly there, you know, I can zoom in a little bit. Okay, it was holding it beautifully around here. It was calling some lows with it, exactly. But now it's started to stray away from it. But it's strayed away from it a number of other times before. I mean, look at it in 2021. It wasn't really that close to it, really, was it? It was going up. And there's something else I'd like to address as well, is global M2 will not call the top of the market, okay? When you see global, like people were trying to say that when global M2 was topping here around 23rd of September, people are saying Bitcoin's going to top on the 23rd of September. No, 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 that's not going to be the case, okay? Now, as you can see, the M2, since then, M2 is still continuing to go up. And something I'd like to address as well is, if you look at 2021, okay, Bitcoin had topped, okay, this thing kept going, okay? And a similar thing happened in 2017. You know, look at that. I mean, I'm not going to get it perfectly lined up now, but look, 2017, rally up, you know, Bitcoin topped, rest of the crypto market nuked with Bitcoin, and this thing kept going. It was only later that global M2 started to come down. So don't listen to people too much about like following this closely, like it's telling them the direction week to week. It's not the case. And here's Henrik Zeberg again. I'm covering him a lot lately because he's quite outspoken about his beliefs, and he's really putting it out there with charts, and he's you know, everything he believes in. The liquidity cannot stand the turn of the business cycle, no matter what the liquidities try to tell us. The recession is coming and it will crush stocks. BTC will get absolutely slaughtered, crypto annihilated. This is the largest bubble ever. It will burst no matter what the Fed tries to do. But he is also a believer of the blow off top first. So if you listen to what he's saying, he's calling some sort of financial crisis will happen, some sort of recession. He said it's inevitable, but there will be a blow off top first. And here you can see when, you know, M2 has continued up after you know, the stock market has topped. So here's the S&P 500 in 2000. You know, liquidity carried on going. You know, here's 2007. Liquidity kept on going. So you could expect probably a similar thing will happen again. So anyone, you know, trying to call the top with M2 might be a bit late. And you know, if you're trying to follow it too long, you're definitely going to be stuck in when you don't want to be. Now, everyone's heard about the banana zone, and I really respect Raoul Pal. He's bang on right about the banana zone. He looks at a lot of charts. He's one of the key people that's pushed the M2 out there. But the thing is, a lot of people will listen to Raoul about the M2, but then don't listen to everything else he's talking about, the data and the cycles and everything like that. So, you know, he put it out there that the M2 is going up, the market should go up. That was absolutely right. But trying to call the top with it, I don't think so. Okay, but here he is talking about Bitcoin. This is not M2. This is just him talking about the chart of Bitcoin at the moment. Okay, compared to now. Okay, so Bitcoin in 2017 to 2018. This is something what the structure looked like. Okay, before you know, dropping down into September and then following it up until the end of the year. Okay, and he says, and all you care about is if September is going to be weak. You can't be saved from yourself if that is your mindset. This is a comparison versus 2017. And it does look very similar there, doesn't it? Dipping off into from August into September. And, will it find a bottom here, somewhere around here now, and start to rally up into the end of the year? Doesn't mean we won't have some pullbacks along the way, and it's going to be choppy and it's going to be emotional. But it does look like we are setting ourselves up for a massive rally in Q4. Now, when I showed you the M2 lag on Bitcoin, I set that with an 84-day lag, which is 11 weeks. Now, if you put this on gold, okay, and you remove the lag, so you see I've put it to 0, okay, if you look, actually, you could say maybe it's closer or not, but it's actually very close in comparison to what gold's doing at the moment, okay? It's and gold has now broken out. So is gold leading M2 in some ways? There's always that to question. I mean, I would say as well with gold is when you get a pullback. So what you want is gold going up. When it pulls back, that's when the rest of the risk assets fly. So one of the reasons that the markets have been pulling back in the past week or so is because gold's having a run. Yeah. Once gold's had a little run and calmed down, we should get the risk assets flowing again. See what I'm saying? And another thing I noticed about M2 as well is, and like I say, don't hold this, too closely with, the comparisons and everything. But I mean, while Bitcoin's straying away from M2, actually ETH's starting to follow it more closely because I think Bitcoin's been having a nice pullback to liquidate plenty of longs. Okay, Ethereum's been holding very well, and I'd say probably you'd see this in other stronger assets holding closer to it. Okay, so that's an interesting one to look at. And for the health of the crypto market, I always like to come to DeFi Llama and have a look at the total value locked in DeFi, and I like to look at stable coins, their market cap, and TVL. And if I can see it's continuing to grow, I feel like the crypto markets are healthy. And I tell you what, another thing to add to compliments with that is often this chart, if you take off if you just look at the TVL, yeah, okay, it's quite often looks like the total crypto chart. So if it looks very similar, then, that's probably what the situation, maybe total 2 actually. Okay, so let's add those back on there again. Let's add on stablecoins market cap, and let's add on DEX volume, okay, and we can zoom in closer to what's been going on in recent months, okay. As you can see, the stablecoin volume's just growing. As you can see, the TVL has been growing, and you can see that the DEX volume's been growing. So if all those 3 things in crypto, and most of this is on ETH, by the way, some of the bigger chains like Solana and everything else contribute to that as well. But a lot of the big volume is on Ethereum. I mean, if I just click over to Ethereum, you can see. So we have 152 billion in total locked in DeFi. 90 billion of that is locked in Ethereum. And then we look at Solana, 11 billion. And then we look at what's Bitcoin got, 7 billion. Binance, 7 billion. Tron, 6 billion. Base, 4. Arbitrum, 3. And then Hyperliquid 2.4, Sui just around 2 billion, Avalanche just under 2 billion, and then it goes down into 1 billions and everything like that. And you can go on there and check it yourself. This is a good thing to mention is when you look at DeFi Llama, you can go and check out your chains that you're invested in and see if you think you're seeing growth on there as well. I'll give you an example. Okay, so this is Sui. Okay, we can see that Sui, the TVL has grown on there. Let's look at stablecoin market cap. Okay, stablecoin's been going up, taken a bit of a dip recently though with the stablecoins, but Sui has been having a pullback. And then let's look at the DEX volume. Okay, so the DEX volume did tend to climb. Let's have a look at that. There we go. And it's staying relatively steady, quite volatile to be honest. Maybe dropping off there the last month or so, but like I say, Sui has been having a bit of a pullback. So like I said, these metrics tend to follow price as well, and price follows them, and vice versa. Another thing I like to check in on all the time is the Russell 2000. It's the lower caps of the stock market, and although we know that the Nasdaq and the S&P 500 have made new all-time highs recently, the Russell 2000, which is the lower caps or the top 2,000 stocks in the US, that it still hasn't broken all-time highs. And all these blue lines here, they're all presidential elections, okay? And as we can see, after every election, and I can stretch that back to 2000 on this chart, it goes back further when I look at NASDAQ, because literally the Russell 2000 follows the S&P 500 and NASDAQ. So if they're making new all-time highs, I believe this is going to make all-time highs. It's made all-time highs after every election, okay? We can see. Okay, it didn't make all-time highs in, around this 2008. Obviously, it was taking time to climb out. But nevertheless, after the elections were somewhere on the way down, okay? It went extremely higher after the elections, okay? Same for after 2012, after 2016, after 2020, and, 2024 elections happened in November last year, and it dropped off since then, and it looks like it's heading up to the all-time highs now. And as I've shown you in the previous video, go back and have a look. I showed that how this formation is very similar to the others chart. You can overlay it. In fact, I'll do it now quickly as well, because it's always good to look at others. New price scale. Okay, and we can see, let me make that bigger like that. Okay, you can see that that pattern is very similar. I won't go over about that too long. I covered that more in another video, but as you can see, still following it nicely. Others coming up, and looks like Russell 2000 will break new all-time highs. Will it have a pullback first? Will it take a little time? I don't know. I haven't got a crystal ball, but it looks like it's going to happen. And if you've heard about the 18.6-year real estate cycle, okay, we are coming to the end of an 18.6-year real estate cycle that started around when the property markets bottomed around 2009, 2010, okay, after the global financial crisis, that decline there. Okay, so we've been rising up now, coming up to around, 2010, they say it was called a bottom. And, I think it showed on other charts, to be honest. But we're now, from 2010, say, we are, 15 years into the cycle, okay, and it takes roughly around 4 years for the property cycle to bottom, okay. Now, is this a top here back at the late 2024, and is this a complacency bounce, or am I being too biased that could be the end of a real estate cycle and this is going to go higher? The thing that's different about this is that it topped around October 2024, and we're nearly a year into it now. So I don't know whether this property cycle is going to take another burst up with what you're seeing around the world with, it's been high interest rates, the property market has slowed. So I'm sort of thinking it's at a top, but I don't know. So I'm just going to keep following this for now. For now, this is a huge bounce. It's bounced off of a 200-week EMA, okay, and the other EMAs are starting to turn bullish. So could this mean that the property cycle goes on for longer, which would then mean the stock market and everything goes on for longer? And that would include crypto, because crypto is just another risk asset, really, a risk asset class that runs with all the others like the stock market. So if this carries on running, I guarantee you've got much more time with the stock market and everything. But like I say, there's other things that warn you that that's not happening. Like I say, with the uncertainty with the Fed and the economy, late to cut rates, high yields, all of this stuff, it does make you feel like a recession's coming. So that's kind of making me feel like that's the top. Or maybe it gets one last little push and then it crashes. Maybe that's something that could happen. So interesting to watch that. If you want to have a look at the housing market in the US, follow this chart, the HDX. And now for the DXY, the dollar. I always like to start with it zoomed out, looking at these lows, touching the trend line, looking at these highs, touching that trend line. And, we're right down here at the lows of this trend line again, okay? And it's interesting to see whether is the dollar going to bounce here or not, okay? I've got this trend line drawn in here, so it's still in this downtrend, but it's starting to curve up a little bit. It sort of dropped below 97, and it sort of broke above 97. It tried to get above 100. It failed, and it's been failing of lower highs ever since. So it's starting to make me feel like this could break down further. But will it break this trend that's been going since, like I say, since 2008? Okay, so it's really interesting to watch what's going to happen with the dollar. Another interesting thing to point out as well is this was 2020, 2021, okay, when the markets were doing fantastically, okay, and this was late 2017, early 2018, where the markets were topping out as well. So I'm just wondering whether we can see it come back down here again. I mean, that could take weeks to months to get down there, though. That's the thing. So this is another thing asking you the question of whether the market cycle will continue out into next year, or are we reaching a blow off top phase very soon in the coming months? It's really hard to tell, but what I'm trying to do is not to take in too much of what everyone's saying. You know, you can get caught up with what everyone's saying. Everyone's talking about it's going to be a blow off top soon, or people saying we're already in a bear market, or people saying this is an extended cycle, this is a super cycle. I heard all of that in 2021 as well. It's a super cycle. It's going to go on for another year and everything. No, it didn't. Okay. And what I would like to say to everyone, what you really need to do is really understand what you're looking at in the charts, because you can watch these things happening. Okay, so like I said, with Bitcoin dominance, I expect that it ends with Bitcoin dominance at a low. So as long as when I start seeing Bitcoin dominance crashing, and altcoins are pumping, I'm going to be taking profits. I'm going to be exiting slowly but surely out of the market. Same thing if the DXY starts dropping. Go back to the DXY. Now, if this keeps dropping and it's coming down towards here, I'm going to be taking profits. If I see this reverse, if I see Bitcoin dominance sort of starting to make a reversal pattern, there are times where I'm going to be saying, right, I think it's over. And you're going to see that in some of the charts as well. If they're really pumping hard and seeing indicators flashing, there's going to be lots of indicators telling you that the market's getting overheated. And you should always be taking profits when the market's overheated, okay? And looking to buy again low in the next bear cycle, But something really big is going on with crypto at the moment. Institutions piling in. They seem to know what's going on. Okay, so I'm just following with that at the moment. They all wouldn't be aping in billions of dollars into this if they didn't feel like it was going to go up for a period of time. Okay, they're not in it for a quick trade with billions of dollars. Okay, this is like a long to medium term play here. Okay, and Tether minted 2 billion USDT recently. Okay, that was only in the past week. Okay, I think this was posted on the 4th of September. So Tether printing or minting, sorry, funny, printing, minting, something like that. Okay, but when they do that, they have to be backed by US treasuries and other real world assets. Okay, they can't just mint stable coins out of nowhere. There has to be something real backing it. Okay, and that's why the USDT and USDC have got the support of the US government. Okay, and like I said, USDC here, Circle minted a record 2.5 billion USDC in the past 2 days. This was on the 29th of August. So in the past week or so, we've seen over 4.5, 5, maybe it's probably more by then, billions of dollars of stablecoins minted. And what's going to happen with those stablecoins? Sooner or later, they're going to get unleashed into like assets. I mean, not all of them. Some of them are for doing real world business or real world asset stuff on chain, and staking and getting yield on those dollars. But a lot of it's going to find its way into the altcoin space. I really believe that. Okay, and when we look at USDT dominance, I really believe that all that minting of those stable coins is what's holding this dominance up, okay? Because dominance means it's share of the total market cap of crypto, okay? So like I say, it's all the dominance charts are working against each other. You've got Bitcoin dominance, USDT dominance, Ethereum dominance. Cardano dominance, XRP dominance, all of them, you know, they've all got their own dominance charts, which you can find on TradingView. Now, I believe the reason that USDT dominance hasn't come down yet, which is another alt-season indicator, okay, like I say, it breaks down past this 3.73 level. We're in the party zone. You can't start coming below 2.5%. You're in the after party zone where you really want to be heavily taking profits. That's why I highlight this, because you know, this is the good time, party zone, where you want to be taking profits, okay, and making money. And the after party zone is probably where you should be thinking about going home, okay, because it starts getting a bit messy, you know. And like I say, it's still lower highs, okay, and lower lows, and it's really trying to get past this trend line now, and it is failing. It's not doing it yet. I mean, it could do it in the next week or so. So this is one to watch out for. But even if it did, right, then if it broke out there, I wouldn't say it's game over. I'd be watching it closely, but I wouldn't want to see it break past this trend line. I always sort of have a backup trend line, you know. So you've got your one that's in the near term, and then you've got your one in the long term. Okay, and if it breaks the one in the near term, you've got to sort of, you know, be on alert really. And then if it's there, you've got to start making decisions, you know. But you know, all the EMAs are turning down bearish. I mean, even the weekly 5 and 13 hasn't managed to cross bullish for the USDT dominance. So, you know, we could probably expect that we're at least going to see it come back down to this 3.73 level soon. But will it break it? That's the thing I want to know, and I'm waiting to watch out, and we'll cover it on this show. And my total free chart is still unchanged. Okay, I've still got all of the emotions. We're watching it, we're tracking it as the cycle progresses. Okay, so like we saw back in 2021, the euphoria, the complacency bounce, the anxiety, the denial, the panic, the capitulation, the anger, the depression, the disbelief, the hope, the optimism. And like I say, Bitcoin's already in its sort of belief and thrill phase, whereas altcoins are yet to break out into belief. Once it breaks the all-time high, yeah, the previous euphoria, that's when it will be back in belief. That's when we should start to see more retail investors showing up into space, new people. Now, what I did notice was I set this, you know, this just from this wick here. This is a weekly chart, by the way. Okay, so if we zoom in, okay, now you know, you've got this resistance line here at around 1.13 trillion. Okay. Now, so from this wick to this wick, I started looking at the trend. Okay. And drew it out further. I was expecting it to perhaps come up sooner, to be honest, but it took a long time, and then it come up to it. Okay. Now it's found it as resistance and support. If you can see this, I'll zoom in really close on it. Okay. You can see, you know, it's struggling to get over it, and then it's finding it as support. Okay, it's not breaking back down below it, which is indicating to me that now more confidence that this might start challenging this high soon, the all-time high for total free. Okay, we are very, very close to seeing this get broken. Okay, and like I say, you've got this rising channel of lower lows, sorry, higher lows and higher highs. Okay, and if it was to break out up into there, into sort of, you know, say, sorry, let's move the dates over so you can see, you know, like say I've marked off the end of the year here in red. Okay, you're talking, if it was to get up there, you're talking around a 2 trillion. That's a 2x on the whole crypto space. Okay, but that's $1 trillion in altcoins, not including Bitcoin and ETH. Okay, in the top 10. Okay, so that's over $1 trillion to come into the top 10 crypto space, apart from Bitcoin and ETH. That's a lot of money if that was to happen. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it might be a wild prediction. I'm just looking at a chart and looking at things and seeing that this is in a channel, and this is the all-time high of 1 trillion. Okay, and can it get to double what it was in the last cycle by the end of the year? Now, imagine I drew that out further. Okay, so people talking about cycles into next year. So let's go to like say Q2. Okay, like around March. Sorry, taking a bit of time to get there. you know, you're talking over 2 trillion. Yeah. So the longer it goes on, the longer higher it could go. But it is just one interesting thing. And when you look at the move, like from last time, absolutely huge move for altcoins. We've had a huge accumulation range, a bullish chart, in fact, because this is typical market structure. You know, big highs, big lows, big accumulation, stepping out of it. You know, this is proper market structure. So I believe it's going to do it. I really do. So I believe that alt season is very close, and we're knocking on the door of it now. And if you're thinking about what about your cryptos that are not in the top 10, what are they going to do? You know, well, here we go. So very similar. You've got a long-term trend line here that it found support on in the recent months, so April and June, okay, and it rose up and it's now finding resistance around this 300 billion mark, okay. All-time high for this is up at around just under 500 billion, okay. So others, and if you think about this is all the cycle playing out to a T as with the risk flow, okay. So you've got Bitcoin led, broke its all-time high first. Ethereum's second biggest crypto. It's lagging behind Bitcoin, and it looks like it's about to break all-time highs. Behind that, you've got Total Free, which is your top 10 cryptos. That's lagging behind Ethereum. And then lagging behind that, you've got your lower cap altcoins that are not in the top 10. So this is the whole crypto market excluding the top 10. And if this breaks out, this has also got some sort of a channel as well. Let's show this. Okay, let's show this. This channel dates back to 2017. Okay, it rode into the 2018, 2019 bear market. Okay, 2020 rose up, 2021 topped out. Then it's come back down. Didn't quite get down to the line again, but it has in recent months, and it found support on it. Now, so if this was to, you know, play out as this channel, okay, you're talking about, and it got to say the end of the year, to early next year, you're talking about a 4 trillion in crypto markets, not including the top 10. And that'd be huge. That'd be huge. I mean, I don't know if that's possible. I'm not analytical enough to understand the whole market cap of crypto and whether this is possible or not. I'm just looking at a chart and just saying that's what it looks like could happen. But it all depends on the amount of time we've got, don't it? And also, you've got to think about the institutions. What do the institutions want to be in? They want to be in the bigger cap stuff. They want to be in like your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, Solana, you know, all of these bigger chains. Are they really going to be piling in trillions into this space? I don't think it's going to get up there. I mean, I'd love to, I hope it would, but I'd say, you know, is this going to break all-time highs? Likely. You know, can it double? Can it get to, you know, like I say, another trillion maybe in the rest of the altcoin space? Possibly. I mean, the thing is, the on-ramps are setting up for crypto with all the banks getting involved and setting up new rails to get in and stablecoin bills, and you know there's so much hype that could potentially come. I think this is the thing as well. People are saying retail's not coming this cycle, it's lackluster and all of that. But what if we are not far away from that all happening? And you know, crypto is way bigger than it ever was in any other cycle. It's got the rails there for more adoption than we've ever seen before. You know, we've got a crypto president. um, you've got a crypto government, a crypto SEC. I think the possibilities are endless for the future. I just don't know what happens in the next coming months and everything. And I'm just going to follow the charts. Like I said, others still in an uptrend, just like Total Free. You know, you've got to watch these EMAs. So a big tip for EMAs, okay, is you know, get this indicator. It's the Traders Reality Indicator. Yeah, Traders Reality is a YouTube channel with Tino, great presenter. He's more of a short-term trader, but he created this indicator called the Traders Reality Indicator, and you can go on there and you can get, you know, these nice candles and with the EMAs, and it's got a lot more in it as well. If you're into short-term trading, it can have like the New York session, the Asia session, and all of that. You can have all the time frames on there, and weekly highs, weekly lows. But it's really good for the EMAs, because I really like the 5 and 13 EMA, which is the 5's the yellow one, the 15's the 13 is the red, 50 is the blue with this purple band, and the 200 is the white, and they're the best EMAs to use. They literally are the best EMAs to use. You look at 5 and 13 for your near term, and then you're looking at 50 and 200 to find support. And look how it bounced on that 200 before, and it can do that and bounce on the 50, like here we saw in this previous cycle, bouncing on the 50. It's really good to use these EMAs. But like I say, as long as these EMAs are bullish, I'm bullish. When those EMAs turn bearish, I get a little bit bearish too, despite what's going on in the markets. Okay, and just having a quick look at some of our favorite altcoins at the moment, and of course Solana. The trend line held beautifully back there in April. Okay. This trend line goes back to 2020. Okay, all-time high of 2021 around $260. Okay, and then we only just briefly made a new all-time high of around just under $300. It just couldn't break $300. That was back in January 2025 at the peak of meme season. Okay, that pump there was probably everyone exiting their meme coins and back into Sol, okay, to pump it up. Okay, and after that it saw this decline through into April, and it found a bottom around the same time as Ethereum did. And the EMAs still look bullish. Look at these fanning out. Okay, so you've got the 200, the 50, and then you've got the 5 and 13. They're just chopping around. Okay, it's got to break this 220 level. It's heading up there. It's climbing up there beautifully, actually. And the thing is, as well, this big correction here. People could have said, "Oh, that huge M pattern," but look at this big W. Okay, and retesting the EMAs and then moving away. Looks like it's starting to make a climb up to that all-time high zone. Okay, like I say, it seems like it's $100 away. It can happen very quickly. I'm pretty bullish on Solana. I think it's going to do fantastic in this cycle. And just before we take a look at Sui, I wanted to bring this to your attention. Sui had an unlock of 1.62% of its supply, okay, on the 1st of September. And we are now on what's the date today? The 6th of September. Okay, so seems to have survived the the token unlocks. Okay, obviously they could be still selling over the next week, but it seems okay at the moment. You've got other unlocks here. If you're in any of these cryptos, you've got Athena on the 2nd of September. You've got Aptos on the 12th of September. Layer Zero, Pump Fun on the 14th of September. Pump Fun's been doing excellent. I don't know if you're in that, by the way. I am. It's really doing excellent. And you've got some others. GO, I've got some of that. The 7th of September. I don't fear these unlocks really too much, especially in a bull cycle, because the supply kind of gets eaten up a bit, and also the people who the tokens unlock to, they're a believer just like you, whether that's an institution or private investors. They don't want to sell their bags yet. They want to see the gains first, then they're going to sell. So just bear in mind that when you see all of this supply, that'll get unloaded, but it'll probably get unloaded a bit later on. So, make sure you're taking your profits when them gains come, because these guys will be quick to dump on you when they see their gains. And looking at Sui, another one holding a fantastic trend line. Okay. This trend line goes back to, 2024, because it's not as old of a coin as Solana or Ethereum or any of those. Okay, but nevertheless, it's been holding it, and it, I thought it was losing it. We go back to, when was this? It did lose it. It wicked below it on the 1st of September. Okay, and then managed to bounce away. Okay, and it's still holding this 200 EMA. Now, this is the daily, by the way. So this is the 200-day EMA. It's managed to, it lost it and it's climbing above it again. And it's battling with these 5 and 13s to get them to tick up bullish again. But not only was it that trend line I was showing, the one going up, you've also got this trend line coming down. Okay. So coming down here, it's mostly wicks. That's why it cuts through it. You can't take too much notice of wicks. And also with trend lines as well, is if you start thinking to yourself, oh, well, it broke through it with that candle there and stuff like that, you're going to disregard a lot of trend lines. Okay. So what you have to think about with trend lines now, if you're a trader, traders hate diagonals quite often because they see them as not trustworthy for support or resistance, because they try to set their stops below them and or above them, and they end up getting stopped out or liquidated. But if you're an investor and you're just monitoring the markets, what you're trying to do is actually just watch price action. Okay, you're monitoring how your bags are doing and how your investment is doing, and like you're looking for trends. You're looking for, if you're a holder, you're looking for uptrends and downtrends. Now I can see this is a downtrend on the daily, you know, but I'm looking for where it's going to meet. Is it going to start to see a reversal? That's what I'm looking for. If I'm seeing a downtrend and I'm not seeing reversals, that's when I could start to get a little bit concerned and maybe start to think about making decisions. Do I want to risk off a little bit, or or do I see it as a bullish thing, and do I want to add more to my positions and stuff like that? So if I put it on a weekly, I mean, like, this is not looking too bad at all, is it? I mean, what looks bad about that? Okay, sorry for all my lines. I've got a lot of lines on this. I do a lot of um, I do a lot of watching Sui, because obviously I've got a quite a big position in it, so I'm often watching the lines and that a lot. But yeah, I mean, so not only did it have that upwards trend, it's got this downwards trend from the highs. Okay, now it had a high there and a high there. That was 2 touch points. On the third go, it broke through. Not only that, it then held it as support. Okay, and it's continuing to do that right there now as we speak. Okay, and it may have started its bounce away. Okay, now 5 and 13 weekly are still technically bullish at the moment, and it's been had a bit of chop anyway. So when it's in a chop area, you've got to just take it with a pinch of salt, really. But what I want to start to see is them start to tick up and move away. But now, since then, we've got this other trend line, because we've got this high to this high. So what I want to see is, I want to see it bounce up here. I want to see it take out this level here around $4, and then I want to see it break above, and I want to see it then take on the all-time high. And then I would be looking at this for like some sort of support if that was to happen. And then let's take another look at Chainlink, of course, because Chainlink had a lot of good news recently, and I believe it's going to have a great cycle now. I've got even more bullish on Chainlink. I've even added to my Chainlink bag. I added recently at around $16. I think that's when I kind of around July, when I got a little bit bearish on Cardano and really bullish on Ethereum. And I already had, like, obviously big bags in Ethereum coins, like like Chainlink and Aave and Uniswap and all of that, and AVAX. But I just wanted more Chainlink the other day. So I like to say, I added more to my chain. I was buying Chainlink in the bear market. Okay. I mean, I remember holding it in 2021, but I bought a lot more in the bear market. And then I bought more. I saw it come down to, where was it? Oh, yeah. No, I was buying it around 16. And then I've recently added a little bit more, like in the last couple of days. Yesterday, in fact. I'm getting bullish that I feel like this is going to break out. Now it's coming down below this $22 line, which could be a wick when I put it on the weekly. Let's put it on the weekly. Okay. I tend to look at most things on the weekly. There's no point in getting too caught up with the daily candles. I do the daily candles because you can see more detail, and when I'm doing these shows, I want to show you more currently what's going on at the time. But I hold way more faith in weekly candles. Okay, where they weekly close. Always check your Sunday weekly closes, Sunday night or Monday morning when you wake up. And yeah, you know, this could be a wick. You know, by the end of the weekend, you never know. But if not, we're going to see what's it going to do. Is it going to come down? I think there's another trend line, another support resistance line here, somewhere around there. Okay, so like I say, this $16 area, maybe it's a little bit higher. You know, could be $17, somewhere like that. I could see it finding support if it is losing this now. But I think eventually this is gonna, because like I say, this had a huge accumulation range. It's got higher lows, higher highs. It's got this other trend line coming down from the top, you know, with the lower highs. Okay, yeah, some people could be bearish on this and say, "Oh, it's just lower highs." But I just think with the conditions and whatever else is going on with the cycle, yeah, I'm confident that's going to break at some point. I hope you've got a lot from this show. We've talked about the Fed's going to cut rates, stock markets are at all-time highs, and the Russell 2000 is probably going there too. The real estate cycle, has it topped or has it not? We don't know, but it could continue. If it does continue, that means the whole market's continue for longer. We've got Bitcoin and Ethereum and all of the altcoins still looking healthy on the charts. The charts are still bullish when you zoom out. We've got the DXY still heading down, the USDT Dominance still heading down. There's so many factors to counter in when you're looking at the markets. And like I say, you know, you're going to get all these wild predictions from people that, you know, a crash is coming, or, you know, a blow off top's next, or, you know, this cycle's going to be extended. But like I say, just watch these charts that we're watching, or just come and watch them with me every week, because I'll cover them. If you don't know how to look at all the charts, that's fine. I can support you. And you know, if you do know how the charts, maybe look at the charts. Maybe I can, you know, support you and show you things that you may not have covered before. And I'm happy to hear from you about stuff if you know things that you think I should be looking at, because this is a space where you need to continue to learn. You need to continue to understand the bigger picture, the macro picture. Okay, it's not all about what's going on day to day. There's a bigger cycle going on. There's cycles within cycles. You've got the 4-year business cycle, which is pretty much the election cycle, the halving cycle. I think Satoshi created the halving cycle to go with the presidential cycle that goes with the business cycle. And then, you know, though there's also bigger cycles such as the 18.6-year real estate cycle. Another one that I've not been talking about at the moment is the Shemitah 7-year cycle. Don't worry about that. That's coming in 2028 and 2029. So that's going to be big as well. But there's so many cycles within cycles, and there's so many charts to track those cycles, and you just kind of need to follow your way with it. Nothing's ever going to give you this answer. If you're looking around on YouTube to find the guaranteed answer, you're looking for a YouTuber to tell you exactly what's going to happen, well, I think you could come unstuck eventually. Okay, you might have someone who's right for a while, but eventually someone gets it wrong. I might get it wrong, but what I'm trying to do is not get it wrong too much by actually just looking every week. I've not gone to myself, I've got a set answer, you know, this is definitely happening. Oh, it's definitely going to be an extended cycle, or oh, we're definitely going to get a blow off top in Q4. I'm just going to play it by ear, you know. I'm going to follow the charts week by week, assess what's going on with economics, with data, with charts, price action, and you know that will give me the answers. You know, you know, I might not call the top, you know, I might not call it precisely, but I reckon I'll be there or thereabouts. I'll be taking profits on the way to the top. I'll be taking profits on the way away from the top as well, if you know what I mean. So if you want to do that, then keep following me, subscribe, and like the channel, by the way, and like the video, sorry, and yeah, and I'll see you on the next video.